starch. I like potatoes. No, yes, no. Not real potatoes.
Okay, so we discussed last time meditation. How does a person do Jewish meditation? So it's really very obvious what the Alter Rebbe says. First, you have to look around you. Think about it. We read last week that our whole Jewish life today, and in fact, the whole civilization, all of Western civilization anyway, is all dependent on a fly, a common house fly. How could that be so? Think of it. Once upon a time, there was a fly that fell into a goblet of a drink. What was that drink? Some say it was a healthy drink that you take after a bath. After a hot bath, you might want to have a certain kind of a healthy drink. This is Chaya. Good morning, Chaya. And that drink was meant for the king. And when the king's butler, steward, gave him this goblet with the fly in it, he was so angry that he threw the butler in prison. And in prison, there was a Jewish boy. And this Jewish boy was very nice, and everybody liked him. And because everybody liked him, so he was given the responsibility of taking care of this member of the king's household, servants, one of the king's servants. And there was another servant also who had to be, who was thrown in jail at the same time because he was a baker. He was in charge of the king's food, and he served the king some pastry or some bread or something. The king had discovered a little small pebble, something gritty in the food, which could have hurt his tooth. And so he threw him into the jail, into prison at the same time. And you know the story, the way it's developing, that these two servants from the king's entourage were in jail with this nice Jewish boy. And one day they both had unusual dreams, and they didn't understand them, and they were upset. They were troubled. And when the boy came to take care of them, he was like 17 years old. He was 18 now. He came to take care of them. And they were all troubled and upset. And he said, "What's bothering you?" He said, "Oh, we had unusual dreams, and they're troubling dreams. Could you, any idea what they could mean?" He said, "No, I'm not a dream interpreter. Hashem deals with these things. What did you dream?" And they told him their dreams. And he interpreted them very rightly, and they knew it was right because each one had dreamt the dream and its interpretation and what it meant. And when it ever happened to you, you have a dream and you know exactly what it means. You wake up and you forget the dream and you forget what it meant.
All the time.
All the time.
Oh, yeah.
And he remembered their dream and he remembered what it meant. He knew what their dream was. And when he told them what it meant, oh, yes, that's right. They knew it once it was right. And the extraordinary thing is each one dreamed their dream and dreamed the other one's dream too. They were like together in this whole thing. And to each one, he said, in 3 days is the king's birthday, and the king's going to remember both of you. And for the fly in the drink, listen, that's not your fault. The fly could fall into anybody's drink. The king's going to bring you back to your former position. You're going to serve wine to the king in a silver goblet. And to the other one who was negligent in preparing the king's bread, he said that you're going to be hung. and what the dreams were and why he interpreted them the way that he did. I'm not going to talk about now. That's a very interesting subject. But as a result, the Jewish boy said, but when the king returns you to the palace, remember that I told you this was going to happen, and maybe mention my name to the king. He said that twice. Well, of course, the young boy was Yosef. And because he said it twice, so he was really scheduled to go out of prison by then, and they pushed it off 2 years because he relied on the butler instead of relying just on Hashem. The end result was he came out exactly at the right time, which is right at the beginning of the fulfillment of the dream of the because on that it came out on the king's birthday. They came out on the king's birthday. 2 years later, to the day, the king had 2 dreams, and nobody could interpret them. Nobody understood them. Different people, different wise men, they all offered their suggestions what the dreams could mean, and none of them satisfied the king. And the butler remembered this Jewish boy in prison. He told the king about it, and the king said, bring him to me. And so they took the boy after he'd been actually 12 years in prison, 12 years. They bathed him, they clothed, gave him a haircut, they gave him clothes appropriate to go to the king, and the king told him his dreams, and he interpreted the dreams that there's going to be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine, and the king should appoint somebody over the land to gather food during the years of plenty so that everyone will have during the years of famine. And the king said, is there anybody so wise as this in the whole country? And he appointed this Jewish boy who's 18 years old now. No, now he's 30. Now he's 30 years old. He was 12 years in prison. He was 17 when he came down to Egypt. 1 year he was a servant in the house of the slaughterer, and then 12 more years in prison. She was 30, and he became second to the king of the whole of Egypt. And as a result of his being king, second to the king of Egypt, he was eventually able to one, make Egypt the richest country in the world, and 2, to bring his family back to be united with him in Egypt, which led to their descendants eventually becoming slaves in Egypt, which led to them being taken out of Egypt by Moses, by Moshe Rabbeinu, to receive the Torah at Mount Sinai, which changed the history of the world. And that's where we're all here. Now you can ask yourself, what would happen if that fly didn't fall into the goblet of the butler? In other words, there's a much bigger picture taking place, unfolding before our eyes, which Hashem started the whole thing with a fly. Like they say, big things can have small beginnings. And you could say, well, if the fly didn't fall into the goblet of Hashem could have done it some other way. He could have, but he didn't. That's how it happened. So our whole life as Jews, Jewish people, we have a Torah, we learn the Torah, we have the laws of the Torah, and now we're learning Panimius Torah. It all started with a fly falling into a goblet. If that's where you want to start, you could have started somewhere else, because we could go further back. But at that point, in other words, Every single thing has immense significance. There's nothing that doesn't have significance in the world. The Baal Shem Tov taught even a leaf falling off of a tree or a piece of straw blowing off a roof. They used to make roofs out of straw in thatched roofs made of straw. Everything has a purpose, and everything is considered in Hashem's first thought before the world was created. Because Hashem, by definition, is higher than time, higher than space. And so the very first thought of creation has all of this in it. So when a person will think about this, about how great is Hashem's understanding and how great is his creation, like when you came to yeshiva this morning, you see the beautiful autumn day. I looked at my phone, it said today's going to be 80% chance of rain. We're celebrating the 20%. we got the 20% here. Isn't it beautiful? So then you think you have a concept of the greatness of Hashem and how fortunate we are to be connected to him. Doesn't that make you feel good? Yes. So that thought leads to a feeling of happiness and love of Hashem, gratitude that we can be connected to such a great God, as small as we are, that we can do something that he actually wants from us. And that's called a meditation on the greatness of Hashem. Step one. But then there's step two. What's step two? Step two is to think that as much as we can see of the greatness of Hashem in the whole world, every single thing in the world is made with wisdom and is part of a great picture. Much larger picture than we can even begin to fathom. Then we get to step two, which is that Hashem, not just Hashem, fills the world with his wisdom. Not just the world is filled with his light, with the life that he gives to every created thing. The atoms and the molecules and the life that's pulsating through everything in the world, but he's greater than all that, as if the world doesn't even exist. He's so beyond. Sometimes, once I saw a video clip that started with a chicken in a farmyard. And then gradually, you didn't see, you just saw like the leg of the chicken. Then gradually they zoomed out so you could see there was a whole chicken. Then they zoomed out further till you could see the yard. Then they zoomed out further till you could see the field in which the farm was located. And then the field in the county, and the county in the state, and the state in the country, and the country in the continent, and the continents in the world, and the world in the vastness of space, and then the stars and the world just disappeared in the galaxy. So immense, the creation, and that whole creation isn't even as much as one drop of water out of the ocean. And we get to step two, that Hashem is, like we said, not limited by all the, we say he fills everything with life. Step two is nothing to think about. There's no thing to think about. Hashem is greater than anything. His life permeates everything. His grace surrounds everything, goes through and through everything. There's nothing even to mention of any significance. There's only Hashem. That's step two. So step one is called Mamali Kol Almin. Hashem fills the whole world with life. And step two is to think about the way that Hashem is beyond all world. The whole concept of world is like a contradiction to the unity of God. There's only Hashem. As I mentioned this to you last Friday. When I first came to 770, I was confused about this concept. And I asked a very smart boy. He was a boy then. Now he's one of the teachers, big teachers in the yeshiva. I said, what's the difference between these two terms? He says, each term has a message. The message of the level number one is that Hashem is the source of life of everything. Every created thing gets its life from Hashem. And level two, Soivev, is the message of Soivev is that there is no world. There is only Hashem. And from this meditation, we get a sense of the awe and a sense of awe and the greatness, infinite greatness of Hashem. And then we go to step 3. So let me just review these terms for you on the board. Step 1. Hashem is Mamale Kol Almin, which is Aramaic, means he fills all worlds. Everything that belongs in a world, on any level of the world. We learned there are 4 levels of worlds, right? Atzilus, 4 levels of worlds: Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. These 4 letters correspond to the 4 letters of the name of Hashem. Nothing is just taking place by accident. Okay, so we have 4 worlds, and everything, all these worlds get their life from Mamalik Almi. Hashem fills all the worlds, all the creatures in them, all the people, all the souls, all the angels, all the supernal intelligences. Not to speak, I mean, we're way beyond, even here in the world of Asiya, the world of physical creation, that includes the heavens and everything in the heavens, the stars and the galaxies, everything. That's all part of the lowest world even. These other worlds are spiritual worlds. But they all get their life from a Malik Alami. And then you get to step 2, which is there's no worlds, there's only Hashem. He is Sovev Kol Almin. That is to say, the word Sovev means he surrounds. He surrounds all worlds. But if there's no worlds to surround, so what does the word surround mean? Usually we take the idea that surround means I have here an object, okay? A latka. It's Hanukkah, we have a latka here. And
Yes, can I eat
we're going to surround the latka with applesauce.
No, sour cream, please.
No.
Sour cream, okay.
Latkes are
Okay.
good on their own. They don't
But
need
if I don't have a latka,
sour cream, salt, and pepper.
what does surrounding mean? It means there's no latka.
Now, who eats plain sour cream? That's gross.
What?
Right? No, latke. Who just eats plain sour cream? That's gross. Just eat the latke.
In other words, there's nothing to surround. There's nothing to surround. So this is the idea that the life of Hashem on this level is not outside, is not inside. There is no outside, there is no inside. There is no up, there is no down, there's no beginning, there's no end.
But they just started doing push-ups on here.
So this is the second level. Now we want to go to level number 3. When you have to take a few minutes to think about this before you daven in the morning. Then the level of level 3, that the word almin is Aramaic for olam. Olam means world. So either Hashem fills the world or he denies the world, but both levels, level 1, level 2, are levels of world. Positive, negative. Yes world, no world. It's two different, they're two sides of the same coin. And the word olam, what does it mean? It means a hiding. The word olam is from the same side. In other words, in our world, that Hashem fills the world with life, or Hashem is greater than anything in the world, implies that there's a world. Remember our first class just had a whiteboard. No world. There's not even a dot yet. Nothing. There's only Hashem. And that is the third level. Ein od milvadoi. There is nothing else. Milvadoi. Ein od milvado. So that's what it means. The person that's why we have Chochmah and Bina and Das to think about these things. And when we think about these things, what's going to happen? On page 71, let's see how it reads inside. 1, 2, 3. The third dark Hebrew line is Hashem is Mamale Kol Almin. There's in the Hebrew letters. Hands up. Hands up. V'soivev Kol Almin. Then that's level 2. How Hashem encompasses all the worlds through and through. There's no barriers. There's no limits. There's no outside boundary. There's no boundary to Hashem. There's no limit to how big he is. There's no limit to how small he is. There's no limit to the amount of energy that he gives out. You can't limit Hashem to anything. And compared to level number 3, nothing has any significance. Okay, those are the 3 levels. If a person will think about these 3 things, turn to page 72. If a person immerses himself in any of the above concepts of Hashem's greatness, then what's going to happen is right here. Nolda, there will be born. V'nis Orera, there will be awakened. Midis Yiris Harememes, a feeling of awe because of the greatness of Hashem. And where will this feeling be? This feeling will be in your mind. Wait a minute, I don't have feelings in my mind. I have thoughts in my mind. So I'm going to have thoughts of the feelings that would be appropriate in contemplation of the greatness of Hashem. That's called the greatness of Hashem. The Hebrew term for it is, so this whole thing is going to come down into your mind with the contemplation of Godless Hashem, or Godless Haboira, the greatness of the Creator. And when I'm thinking about Godless of Haboira, thinking about the greatness of Hashem, so then what's going to happen? In the next set of Hebrew lines on page 72, Liyira will be a sense of awe, and embarrassment, which is a kind of humility. Like if a person was a simple person won the lottery and he became a billionaire. He won $300 billion and he was taken in England to have an audience with the Queen. how would he feel? He's a simple person. He doesn't know how to speak in front of kings and queens. He would feel ashamed of his simplicity. So that's what it means here, to feel ashamed. And they translate it here in the English as humble. It's a kind of humility. It's not fear that I'm afraid the king, someone's going to hurt me, someone's going to do something bad to me. It's a fear of God because of a sense of his greatness and my smallness. That's what we call humility. The Hebrew word for it is to be ashamed. Before the greatness of Hashem Yisbarach, she'ein la sefer tachlis, that his greatness has no limits and no end. That's in the mind. Now we move on to the next Hebrew line, which is the third set of Hebrew words on page 72. This feeling of awe and we call it fear, in my mind, then comes down to the heart. How do they connect? Through the back of your neck. That we remember, the greatness of Hashem is an idea on the right side of your mind called wisdom. And you develop it with all the explanations that we just spoke about, with the different details about the greatness of Hashem's creation. That's in Bina, on the left side of the mind. And then we connect to them with the back of the mind, which is connecting area, the connecting area of the intellect that connects us to these thoughts, that we don't just forget about them. Then if we don't forget about them, if we concentrate on them, we keep them in our mind, then they go down into our heart. And they enter the heart, and the right side of the heart. They awaken in the right side of the heart a feeling, in the left side of the heart, a feeling of fear before the greatness of Hashem. Like, what can I compare this to? Did anybody here ever go to Niagara Falls?
Yeah.
You stand right beside the falls, close.
Yeah.
Did you think of maybe falling in?
Yeah.
You did? But you didn't fall in. Why not? Because you didn't jump. What held you back?
The railing?
You could have jumped over the railing.
I didn't want to jump in, but I thought like, oh, it would be so awkward if I fell in.
This would be terrible. It wouldn't, right. That's fear. You were afraid.
Yeah.
You were afraid of the tremendous power of this water surging over the falls. Throughout the years, there have always been foolish people who were so fascinated by the power of the falls that they wanted to be involved with it, and they would make for themselves a kind of a barrel in which they could hide and jump in and go over the falls and see if they would survive. And sometimes they did, but usually they didn't. Usually they didn't. I saw a video clip was sent to me by a person once of a person who was very depressed. He'd had an unhappy life, a really unhappy life. His mother was addicted to drugs. He was born addicted, and then he was adopted, and his parents raised him with a lot of love, and he sort of settled down. But then in his teenage years, he had a lot of trouble, and he ended up very depressed the whole time. And one time he was walking over the Brooklyn Bridge, and he thought, if nobody says hello to me, I'm going to jump off this bridge. And sure enough, nobody said hello to him, and he just grabbed the railing and hopped over. And as he sailed through the air, he said in this video clip that I saw, he says, as soon as I went over the railing, I knew I had made a mistake. Sounds funny, doesn't it? It sounds tragic. Because that's the awareness that we have that holds us back. And that's the feeling of dread, fear that we can have before the immense power of Hashem when we contemplate his greatness. So it causes us to have a feeling of awe and respect. And, I'm not going to mess around with this. This is really bigger than I can deal with. So that's a feeling. So the feeling of awe in your mind And please take very close note of this. Hasidus is very psychologically oriented, and it defines the very subtle workings of the psyche. So the feeling of the greatness of Hashem causes a feeling of awe in the mind in confrontation of the greatness of Hashem, which translates in your heart to a feeling of fear. That the greatness of Hashem causes me to have a sense of fear. Like if you're driving down the highway, going to the mountains or coming back from the mountains, you don't not drive 95 miles an hour, even if your car could do it. I see these things, these advertisements advertising a car that can do 110 and so many, so fast. Who would want to go 110 miles an hour? It's very dangerous. Yeah, you have a natural fear of that. And then, so that's the first stage of feeling in your heart. There's a feeling of fear because it's generated by the greatness of Hashem. And then, okay, I'm not going to do something dangerous, but I'm now very acutely aware of the greatness of Hashem, and I'm so grateful that I can be connected to such a great and wonderful King as Hashem. And that's a feeling of love, which moves over into the right side of the heart. So a person now feels love in the right side of his heart. And that's how it goes. And then you're ready to daven. Because those feelings of love and fear are the wings that take your prayers up high and you can soar. That's where the feelings come from. You don't just pick up a siddur, you became a Torah observant, you're going to keep Shabbos, you're going to keep kosher, you're going to establish a Jewish home, but when you daven, you don't feel love of Hashem. How come? How do I generate those feelings of love for God? Well, girls sometimes naturally have these feelings. There is such a thing, we're going to learn about it. It's called natural fear and love of God. It's just part of our nature. But these feelings are higher than that. These feelings are generated from thought. And there's something that we generate by our efforts. So therefore, it's more meaningful. Okay? So this love of God, now in the bottom of page 72, the love of God will glow like fiery flames. And a person will have a passion and a desire and a yearning and a longing to be connected with Hashem. Please note, the Alter Rebbe uses several terms to describe this love. Abba Aza, a very powerful love. Aza, that's the same word as Gaza, like the Gaza Strip, On Yom Kippur, they take the scapegoat and they throw it off a mighty, a very strong mountain, very strong cliff, powerful cliff called Aza. So this is a very strong love of Hashem. Kurdish Be'esh, like fiery flames, burning in the heart. So how do I feel fiery flames burning in the heart? Well, I have to do this meditation. It doesn't just come by itself. Except in very, very rare occasions when a person suddenly feels inspired. Where does that inspiration come from? Generally, it comes through meditation. B'hasheka, with a yearning, b'hafetza, and a desire, utashuka, and a longing, and nefesh shekaka, and another expression of yearning of the soul, to be connected to Hashem, the Gedulas Ein Sof Baruch Hu, to be connected to the greatness of Hashem. Page 73 at the top. And when a person has this feeling, that's called Klesa Nefesh. Klesa Nefesh means that a person, the soul is actually ready to leave your body. That a person is so inspired that he doesn't want to remain in this world at all. Like sometimes people are very, very sick after an illness. I remember my father, Oliver Sholem, had a heart failure, when he was 79 years old, and his life was saved. His life was saved. I believe the Rebbe's bracha had a lot to do with it, but his life was saved. And my mother, God bless her, Aleha Shalom, was trying to bring him back. And he was in the hospital, and she was making for him all his favorite foods, the things that he loved to eat, and he didn't want to eat it. And she said to him, my dear husband, why don't you have this soup? It's delicious. It's what you like. It's what you love. He said, if it's so good, you have it. He had no desire. He had no desire. So a person comes to this point where it's at that point, because my father was more gone than here. Actually, he came back, Baruch Hashem, all the way, and he did enjoy all these good things again. He was reunited with my mother, with his goodly wife. But Kalesa Nefesh, a person has no desire to be in anything, has no desire to be connected to the world. His mind is so immersed in the concept of the greatness of Hashem that that's all he wants. I don't want the Alter Rebbe, the last entry in Hayom Yom, the Alter Rebbe says, in these moments that he had, his high moments, I don't want your lower Gan Eden, I don't want your upper Gan Eden, all I want is you, Hashem. That's called Klesa Nefesh, where the soul is ready to leave the body. So that's how it goes. It starts with the thinking about the world around us, a nice, beautiful morning, the leaves, the trees, the sky, the clouds, the sun. That's Mamalik Kol Almin. Then we go to higher, Soyu Kol Almin. Then we go to higher than that. The whole Almin doesn't have any significance. There's only Hashem. And this gives a feeling of the greatness of Hashem, feeling of awe, humility, which then becomes a feeling of real fear in our heart. We don't want to mess around with this, which then becomes a feeling of gratitude and love that we have such a great Hashem and such a great Rebbe and such a great Torah and such beautiful, wonderful mitzvahs to do and such a great yeshiva and such a great holiday of Hanukkah. See you tomorrow, Be'ezus Hashem.
Thank you very much.